Hello everyone, I am Tacet, and we are now officially in version 5.0, which means now we have a bunch of campaigns, so we will be going over that quite in depth, as well as the normal event week stuff within this video. So as far as the event week, it's a trap, which is quite fitting for the very first campaign, because it's a bit of a paywall, and we end up getting Freki the Wild. But anyways, let's go over all the things. I will be covering a separate video, or possibly two, kind of going over campaigns as well as far as all the tasks and everything, but this will just be a basic rundown of all of the normal stuff, all kind of going a little bit more in depth into it. But let's start with the very first thing, as we normally do. We got ourselves Freki the Wild. He's coming in with red-blue arcanes. It's epic, so you get to stock up for these for only 200 glory each. Definitely worth considering. This is mostly just going to be used for the event this week. However, I would pretty much just use your hero instead or something else, as it's rather underwhelming. It reminds me a lot of Amira. It deals true damage to an enemy, the first enemy, and if they use purple mana, it will deal double the damage. And if they are a daemon or a beast, it'll place Hunter's Mark and inflict bleed on them. Overall, rather average. It's also has a bunch of multipliers here. It has 2 times the daemons, 2 times the beasts, both of which aren't really that meta. However, they do stack, and it would stack with Hunter's Mark and with Enrage, so you can hit absurdly high one-shots on things that are both daemon, beast, Hunter's Marked, and Enraged on you. However, that is excessive overkill, and very, very rarely will you ever be up against daemon, beast, or even any of those two categories, since both of them are not really that meta in the current state of the game, especially daemons. At least beasts still have 50% mana start and such, but even those don't get used too often in the current state of the game right now. As far as other things we have going on, we have ourselves 10% to Grim Woods, as well as 10% all war gear, which does cover about a little bit less than half, I believe, of the kingdom, since there are a lot of beasts in there that end up taking up those slots. I would completely ignore this, but if you do use Freki the Wild in PvP, you do get double the amount of trait stones. However, you're better off just grinding out Explore for whenever you want those trait stones. As far as event keys this week, we have Grim Woods drop table. So as far as everything that's in there, if we go over to Grim Woods and click Show All, you'll be able to see every single thing that is available within the Grim Woods drop table. And as you can see, this is everything right here. All the things that you see here are available in the event key drop table, with the only exception being actually none of them. Never mind. I forgot. You don't have a faction yet, do you? So yes, every single thing you see here actually is available in the event key drop table. It's probably worth skipping, however, this week. The only somewhat okay drop that you'd really get is Forest Guardian, which gives 50% mana start to all beasts. There's a few other ones that are decent, like Direwolf and Cockatrice, but they are such a low rarity that you probably already have them, and if you don't, you can just throw some gold keys for them, so no point in using event keys. So overall, I'd probably say skip. There's a few good empowers here too, like Moonsinger and Spirit Fox, but for the most part, they're all low rarity enough that you would just get them from normal gameplay, and maybe you would go for like 10 event keys to try to get them and probably get all of them within that. But for the most part, none of the really high rarity troops from this kingdom are that sought after, so I'd probably just say completely skip on event keys, unless the campaign tells us to. No, just kidding. Actually, I believe it might on one of the tasks. We actually do know what all 16 of the tasks are. The way that I'm going to be covering the task system for the new game mode of campaigns, which I guess will actually be the next thing that we go over then, but we'll be covering them in a separate video. They will not be actually covered in the Monday video. The main reason for this is the covering of the entirety of all 16 tasks will probably take upwards of about 10 minutes, and we'll just bloat out this video even more than it normally is. However, I will go and explain a brief summary of campaigns for all of you. We'll probably have another video kind of covering this, as well as a separate one for tasks, but I do want to mention it in this one, since this tends to be our most viewed video every single week. So anyways, campaigns. This is a new feature that was added in version 5.0 to the game, which was added last Tuesday, but of course it didn't start until today. Basically what these are is they last for 10 weeks. You'll earn up to 100 stars every single week from doing 16 tasks that then give you a bunch of various rewards. Unfortunately, nearly every single one of these rewards, or at least all the good ones, are paywalled behind spending at least $10 every single 10 weeks, which isn't really that bad. It's only $1 a month. I mean, $1 a week, I mean. However, it's still comes out to like 50 plus, or about $50 a year. And if you start adding that up, if you're going to be playing for like the next 5 years, that's $250. So it definitely adds up over time. And they also have even more pay to win one, where you get stuff like a week early, as well as a few additional rewards. But the biggest issue with it is that you get some things a whole week early, like the Mythic possibly for Guild Wars and stuff like that. But nonetheless, if you do go for it, I would pretty much just go for the basic pass, since it'll save you $15 every 10 weeks. And there's nothing really too overly special. You'll still get everything just by doing this. Do keep in mind, you will be able to get all this content after the fact, but Anyways, basically, you get these 16 tasks. There will be 2 legendary ones for the mid-rarity ones and 10 of these lower ones. You do have the capability of spending gems, 50, 100, and 150, in order to completely skip past the task. I would advise not doing this. It is much better just to do every single one of these tasks. Some are time-locked in the sense that they can't be completed in a day. As you can see here, win a dungeon battle takes 2 days, since you would only get 3 dungeons per day, so it would have to go over 2 days. But for the most part, I would never actually use gems to skip over these. They are perfectly fine just to grind out, and assuming that you can get one of these done within under an hour, which all of them should pretty much be the case, with a few exceptions, it is actually worth it just to grind it out, since you can only farm infinitely about 60 gems per hour. So if it's going to be that kind of time frame, you're better off just actually doing every single one of the tasks. Do keep in mind, if you are going down the free route, that you might want to consider skipping. There are a lot of people that will be, mostly because the only thing you really get are artifacts. Artifacts will basically give you additional stats, as you can see, as you go forward through the event, capping out at a 20 HP, 6 attack, 5 armor, and 6 magic once it is fully maxed out by the final week, or for Elite Pass Plus the 9th week. But it's basically just a bunch of stats. The most useful thing this would be if you do go only for the free pass will be if you need additional help doing pure factions. These amount of stats do apply literally everywhere other than arena. So they apply in guild wars, they apply in factions, they apply in everything that you would ever do. So other than arena. So these would be very helpful just to give you a little bit extra stats to kind of survive or to do a little bit more damage. It's basically the equivalent of having one whole additional potion effect, slightly less in some areas, but it's essentially the effect of having one of those potions that give 7 to all stats, just slightly distributed a little bit differently. But that's basically what they do by the final week. And yeah, overall, it's a nice little bit of bonuses. I would still say, even if you're going free, to still consider going for them. Unfortunately, though, they did paywall everything on this bottom section. These will be obtainable after the fact. Basically, how these work is this week we have 2 things. We got a Devil's Bane, which is a useless weapon, but still a weapon nonetheless. That has like an instant kill chance and higher against daemons. And even if you were up against a 4x daemon team, it is pretty much useless because that amount of instant kill chance is pretty low. And a title. But basically, we did get definitive data onto when these will be coming into the game after the fact. So any of these titles and little profile icons, they will be the same way as anything else that ends up coming in, like through the money ones that we end up seeing through flash offers, where they will basically be available about 3 months after the campaign ends. So you just would have to wait until 3 months after the campaign ends, and you'll be able to get these titles and all the emojis and all the other things that end up coming through here. So those are for those. The weapons will be available on the next time that the kingdom is the event kingdom. So in this case, we have a Mergrim Woods Devil's Bane here. And the next time that is a Mergrim Woods event week, which will be a while since we have one right now, you'll end up getting you'll be able to get this in Soulforge. So you'll be able to craft it then. However, that does mean you will probably not be able to get this weapon for about 5 to 7 months. So that is quite a long amount of time. As far as this pet, I believe a few weeks after the event is over, they mentioned that this will be a pet rescue after the campaign. This means you're only going to likely get 1 or 2 copies of it, whereas if you buy the pass, you'll be able to get it completely maxed, which means you would have to throw an additional 2,500 gems at it once the event comes over to be able to get it maxed, similar to the campaign. However, you could end up, of course, just not maxing it. But yeah, there is a little bit of a price difference, but you will be able to still get this cosmetic pet. And obviously it is cosmetic, so technically it doesn't have much of an effect. However, having it max might be consequential, as going forward, these things might be required for various kingdom upgrades. So do be wary of that. And this one does count for Urskea, which I don't believe is actually required for a kingdom upgrade there, but still, nonetheless, they might be into the future for future ones, so do be mindful of that. Portrait, same way, it'll be 3 months after the campaign, same as the pet. This thing will be available, any troops that you see will be available about 3 to 4 weeks after, pretty much about a month or so after the effect. So once the campaign is finally over, you'll be able to find this in the Glory Gem Guild and VIP drop table, as well as event keys if it was an Urskea event week. So you will be able to get those then. Also, one slight unfortunate thing about this too, which kind of nerfs Urskea even further, this does have immune to poison, and it's Urskea. So that's very, very, very unfortunate, to say the least. It's one of the reasons why Scorpius is going to be quite a bit less effective. Other than that, we have another weapon. This is likely to be during a Forest of Thorns week, which means it could be literal months, several months before you end up seeing it again. So to be wary of that in regard to that weapon. As far as what's the next unique drop? Rune Set, I believe this is just an emoji pack, if I'm not mistaken. And this will be available 3 months after the fact, and you just get it like any other emoji, same as a portrait, 3 months after the fact. And what's the next unique drop? There should be 2 more. So Heart of Rage, this is a rather raging one. Mostly because the way to get it after the fact is probably the most annoying out of any of them. So the way to get Heart of Rage after the fact is about 3 to 4 weeks after the fact. You'll be able to go and open Vault Keys. When this exact moment is, we're not sure if it will actually be announced, but you'll be able to open up a Vault Keys, and you'll have a chance of getting Heart of Rage. It'll be under the same drop table of Cedric, so whenever you would normally get a legendary from a Vault Key, instead of just constantly getting Cedric Sparkle Sack, you'll end up having a chance of getting Cedric Sparkle Sack or Heart of Rage, which theoretically makes Cedric rarer now as well. So definitely a good time to consider getting him before Heart of Rage is actually released, because if you don't have a Cedric yet, he will actually become slightly harder to obtain going forward, as we are likely to be getting more of these things. But anyways, this troop is rather useless, and if you're wondering why it's so useless, it's actually a crafting component. They mentioned that this will likely be used, or definitely will be used, in order to craft a troop at some point. It'll likely be very similar to that of Xenos, in that you need 3 pieces in order to get a mythic. However, given that these are rarer, it could be almost like a Zukov, in that you need 3 troops in order to go craft this new boss troop. When this will be available, it'll probably be literal months from now until we'll actually be able to craft this thing. However, this Heart of Rage will be required as a component to craft a mythic or a boss troop. So do be mindful of this. You will be able to get in Vault Keys after the fact, but obviously trying to get it off of Vault Keys could take literal dozens upon dozens of Vault Keys. One of the reasons I said in the past to say Vault Keys, this wasn't the exact reason why I thought you would need to say Vault Keys. However, as I mentioned, there would probably be things into the future that would, and while I was assuming it would be a key rework, a Vault Key rework, which is still probably something that could happen, it looks like we'll also potentially be needing it if you don't buy the pass in order to get Heart of Rage and whatever other similar ones they do as these crafting components. So this also means you might potentially even need more than one, in the sense that it might consume the crafting component. It doesn't for the weapons, but it might if it's a troop, since we never actually had anything that needed a troop to be able to be crafted. So there is a potential that you might even need 2 Heart of Rages. So even if you buy this pass, there still might be a chance you need to go get a spare just so that you still have one. Though having him as a troop is pretty useless, since enrage all enemies and allies for 6 mana cost with no board control is rather useless. And he has Stone Skin, which is kind of redundant given that he gives the enemy enrage. But anyways, that's that thing. Definitely worth considering getting, though, as it is probably going to be used for a very strong troop. Hopefully it's not as weak as Xenos, but it could be closer to that of a Zugov as far as its strength. We don't know. Anyways, other than that, probably the most controversial one is the final thing that you get from the Elite Pass is a Kurandara. This is a Mythic, which is also a Urskea thing that has immune to poison, which is annoying. But this thing ends up coming in with pretty decent abilities. It has one of the better curses in the game. It's going to be a little bit inconsistent since you go multiple turns without getting an extra turn. I mean, with it missing and failing on that 50%. Overall, it's going to be a pretty decent curse option, and its ability is basically a skull spam, essentially. Overall, it's going to be probably a little bit above average. I do feel like Mirage Queen and a few other things will end up working out a little bit more consistently, but the fact that it has Impervious with one of the best curses in the game will be pretty decent. Also, if I'm not mistaken, not counting Queen Aurora, which has +1 to all mana colors, I believe this is the only Mythic, not counting Queen Aurora, that has a link, which ends up helping out a lot, because a lot of Mythics, obviously with their high mana costs, have a little bit of a struggle getting their mana. But basically, the biggest issue with this is anyone who buys Elite Pass Plus will be able to have this Mythic a whole week earlier, and this could conflict with Guild Wars. Guild Wars will now occur still once every 4 weeks. We're going to be having a lot of World Lore events happening pretty much every single Monday, as we do right now, which we'll be getting into soon. However, a lot of the other event weeks, like raids and invasions, which were already there, will start being on weekend events. However, Guild Wars will still occur once every 4 weeks and will coincide with a bunch of other events. So there could theoretically be weeks in the future where we have like a Guild Wars, a World Lore event, a new Mythic on the Friday, some kind of event on the weekend for the Friday, and have like 4 or 5 events going on at one single time. So there could definitely be a lot of event stacking going into the future. But anyways, the biggest issue with this is, yeah, some people will be able to go and have this thing a whole week early. Will obviously be quite consequential for Guild Wars, as this thing is very good. I'm not sure if they're going to do anything that will kind of rebalance this paywall kind of thing, but as it currently stands, anyone who buys Elite Pass Plus will have the week 5 to 10 rewards a whole week earlier. So this Mythic would end up being one of those things underneath that category. That also likely means whenever we finally have the 3rd component in order to craft whatever the Heart of Rage uses 2 campaigns from now, then they'll probably have that as well a whole week earlier compared to everyone else. So it's a little bit unfortunate that it's set up that way. but that is the way it is currently set up. But do keep in mind, every single one of these will be obtainable after the fact, and I didn't mention it yet, but Kurandara, similar to the troop, will be available 3 to 4 weeks after the fact, and will be in all the standard drop tables as well as Soulforge, in the Glory Gem Guild and VIP chest drop table. One thing to note about Kurandara, though, which will make it almost more like the Apocalypse troops in a way, though not exactly, since you could still event key for it. However, this troop will never be available for an exclusive week in the drop table. So as you guys know, every single first Friday of every single month, we end up getting a new mythic that is available in Glory Gem Guild and VIP keys, and it is the only mythic that is available in those 4 keys. However, Kurandara will never have an instance where it is like that. So the only way that you can get it is out of pure luck, which is very unlikely, using event keys during a Urskea event, since it is from Urskea, which is again also pretty unlikely, or simply crafting it for 4,000 diamonds. So obviously the most viable method of actually trying to obtain it without paying $10 would end up being 4,000 diamonds, which is quite a lot because the rate at which diamonds come into the game, assuming that they do a mythic every single campaign, is actually slower for the most part than the rate of these mythics coming into the game. So not even counting the mythic that we'll also be getting every single Friday, you wouldn't even be able to keep up for free with the campaign mythics. They have mentioned that they won't always do a mythic, so hopefully they won't, because the rate of diamonds won't be able to keep up with that. But yeah, as it currently stands, if they happen to do a mythic every single campaign, the natural rate of diamonds cannot actually keep up with crafting every single one of these. And realistically, that is the only way you can really get this as a free-to-play player, is to craft it with 4,000 diamonds, as the other methods to do so are rather inconsistent. Anyways, that's pretty much everything with this. I will be covering probably 1 or 2 other videos going over campaigns a little bit more in depth, one going over all 16 tasks, and another one kind of just doing a more concise overview of pretty much everything you need to know in a little bit greater detail. Just kind of summarized up all nicely. But I did want to mention some stuff with it. And of course, if you still have any questions about it, feel free to leave it in the comment section below. Anyways, let's get over to the rest of the event week stuff before we make this video go on forever. So, we have ourselves invasions. No unique rewards as far as buying packs, though I do still advise going for about tier 3 to help your guild, and also because it gives you a pretty good amount of tokens relative to the amount that you pay. Pretty good. It's only 250 gems for 6 of the tokens, which is almost an entire epic medal, as well as all the other benefits that you get. Also, I got Wolf Garrick from one of these this morning, which was pretty fun. I don't need Wolf Garrick, obviously, but do keep in mind that mythics are in this drop table, assuming that they fall underneath the category. And for the category for this one is Mergrim Wood, so it is possible to get the Mergrim's Wood mythics. Obviously, the chance of doing so is exceedingly unlikely, but it's still possible. Anyways, these events, pretty straightforward as it normally is. Basically, just do the highest rarity. The highest rarity one is Amnesia. It's this light blue color. Always do this every single time you see it. Don't ignore it. Go for it immediately. Then you have the orange ones. These are legendary ones. These are second priority. Whenever you don't see this light blue one, you go for the oranges. Then third priority are these epics. Whenever you don't see any of these light blue ones or these orange ones, you simply go for these. And lastly, the main one you want to avoid is that darker blue one, which is ultra rare color. These you want to completely avoid as they give the least amount of points, so you are going to be forced to have to do some amount of them. But those are the ones you want to save for absolute last and ignore them for as long as possible so you can optimize your points. Amnesia will give the most with this light blue, second most Wrath with this orange color, third most these purple colors, and the absolute worst being those blue colors. And that's pretty much how the point system works and all you really need to know in that regard. As far as what you have as far as restriction, you have yourself Mergrim Wood, so this does allow you to use any of the Mergrim Wood troops as well as any of the Mergrim Wood weapons. As far as Mergrim Wood weapons are concerned, both of them are actually craftable weapons that are available this week as far as the better options. Doomed Glaive is the best option that you'd want to consider. This ends up doing a full AoE damage while doing a Doom Skull Burst. It's also arguably the best Doom weapon in the entire game, having both a Storm into its own color as well as a Entangle, which works really well in synergy with a Skull Spam. Other than that, if you need something a little bit cheaper, if you can't afford a Doomed Glaive or don't already have a Doomed Glaive, you can get a Hope's Crescent this week. If you don't already have it, it is craftable and is a lot cheaper than getting a Doomed Glaive, even though it isn't as strong, but it's still a good weapon. It's one of those armor tier weapons that destroy all the armor of an enemy, and it deals triple damage if their HP is higher. There's a very specific threshold that this is actually good in. You normally don't see me using it too much just because even in that threshold, it tends to take a while to win, since you have to cast it 4 times in order to win. However, during that threshold, it is pretty decent, where the enemy has higher HP than you, and they will die within the damage range. If they are within that range and will die die in one shot to this weapon, then you're in a place where this weapon is decent to use. Not the greatest weapon in the game, but based on restrictions this week, it is probably the best option you have if you do not have Doomed Glaive, and is in Soulforge if you don't already have it, and you'd pretty much use it in a very similar team and just end up replacing out the Doomed Glaive. We have Moonsinger here to burst green. It can also tank a little bit. You can end up using the new troop that came out too, but I figured we go more so for mana accumulation, since especially if you're using Doomed Glaive, it'll you're better off with the damage output. There's also Hunter's Mark, the first enemy, which synergizes pretty well with Skull Spam. We have Cockatrice here, which is mostly just a safety measure. Has mana drain and entangle on it. Also gives you a little bit extra yellow mana so you can mana generate here and there. But it's mostly going to be used for disable. And it also creates a bunch of brown, which is useful because if you're specifically using Doomed Glaive, you get to convert all the browns to Doom Skulls, which has pretty good synergy with a Doomed Glaive. Though it is still useful even if you are using a Hope's Crescent, simply for the disable that it has. And the brown will just feed back into himself. Doomed Glaive we already went over. And Spiritdancer is more so for a backup summon. You could theoretically use your hero in first slot to win a little bit quicker. However, it is a lot safer to have a meat shield up there so that once it happens to die, the Moonsinger, you can keep getting Spirit Foxes off of the Spiritdancer. And this also gets a green storm whenever you end up doing that. So if you weren't using Doomed Glaive and you were using something like Hope's Crescent, you would have a way of getting green storm. Obviously, Doomed Glaive should cover its own green storm for the most part. However, it would, for Hope's Crescent, at least give you an additional option, or a option. And in the case of Doomed Glaive, it just gives you an additional option. But overall, it just gets to mana generate a bunch of green for you, which will be the main component. And obviously, all this goes into your Doomed Glaive or into your Hope's Crescent, depending on which one you choose to use for the event. And that's pretty much all you have to do, just keep spamming the weapon and you'll end up winning. And it is highly, highly advised to get Doomed Glaive this week, as I mentioned, it is pretty much the best Doom weapon in the game. I would consider it. Definitely top few, regardless. But definitely 100% worth getting if you can get the crafting material for it by the end of this week. Anyway, speaking of things going on this week, we still have quite a few things here and there. This Tuesday, we're going to be having a faction event for the... it's called something Woods. Why do I forget its name? It's that one tree one. I know exactly where it is. It's Wild Court. Never mind. But Wild Court is the event week that we're going to be having. I always confuse it with that one other one. I did make sure to mention the right team this time. I didn't the last time. But anyways, Wednesday, we're going to be getting a new pet. This will be bringing in a War Gear bonus. So there's not too many instances where that is really good. War Gears are surprisingly underwhelming. One of the biggest things that actually make them underwhelming currently is there's no hero class, oddly enough, that is a War Gear, because the one from this kingdom is a beast, which is, of course, Warden. Warden counts as a beast, not as a War Gear. And this is kind of weird because a lot of the kingdom is centered around War Gears. Yeah, it counts as a beast and there's no War Gear hero class. I don't know, it's a little bit strange. We are still likely to get class reworks into the future, but as it currently stands, yeah, we don't really have one for it. It just seems really, really strange to say the least. But time will tell on if we'll actually end up getting any kind of change that will end up modifying that. But anyways, as far as Soulforge, things that we have coming up to craft this week, the most notable one is Iron Guts. So definitely make sure to get your hands on an Iron Gut. He is the best delve option pretty much in the entire game. The main thing that makes him viable is his ability, pretty much the only thing. And that ends up doing a Devour rate based on what his attack is. And as soon as you get a single Devour, you will pretty much be at 100 attack, especially in the context of delves. And once you do that, boom, every single time you cast, you will get a Devour. And it's just really, really good at killing out higher pieces of content. If you are currently in a position where you're not really able to get really far in delves, this is single-handedly the best thing that you can end up picking up in order to be able to go through delves, in order to be able to get them done just a little bit easier. So definitely make sure to go and pick this up, as it will end up helping you out quite a lot. Also, I did forget to mention it. Gosh, how could I forget? We do have a new faction coming out this Friday. Oops, underneath this little category over here. It's because it's not right here immediately, but we do have a new faction. It's going to be coming out this Friday, and it's going to be associated to Droxzoom. So if you want to go get Droxzoom upgraded a little bit beforehand, make sure to do so, as the new faction this Friday is associated to it. So do be wary of that, and that will be this Friday. And we'll be getting our new 4 troops. It's a lot of Magic Steel related stuff. The Legend actually looks kind of interesting, though I don't think it's going to be viable. But anyways, yes, as far as troops, Hiking Iron Gut. Next, weapons. A lot of things to mention here. The first one is, this was also available last week, one of the weapons for Pan's Veil. However, it is worth reminding everyone that we do have a new weapon pretty much every single week going forward that will be available here. So do keep an eye on that. So basically what they ended up doing in the most recent patch of 5.0 is they added 33 additional weapons, because Broken Spire already had one of these. And basically what these weapons do is they deal double damage to the... They remove all gems of a certain color, and they deal double damage to the enemies of their kingdom. So in this case, Mergrim Woods. And this will always be during the event week thing. So these weapons are completely useless. You would never actually use this weapon. Even early on in the game, I'm not sure you'd even bother using these weapons. However, they are super cheap and they'll be good for upgrading a kingdom. So as some of you know, 20-star kingdoms do require having 8 fully maxed weapons. And some kingdoms this can be pretty hard on. So it is definitely worth considering getting every single one of these, especially if you're later in the game and have the resources to be able to do so, as you'll kind of want to pick these up in order to have a additional weapon to go and max out for trying to get 8 total full maxed out weapons for when we eventually get 20-star kingdoms. There are currently 0 20-star kingdoms, however, we are very likely to get the very first one before the end of 2020, and even if we don't, we're going to get it very, very early in 2021, so it is good to prepare, and these weapons you won't be able to get for months upon months after, so this weapon probably won't be available for 5 to 7 months from now until we see another Grim Woods event, so do make sure to go and pick it up, since it is a new weapon, and there are 1 per kingdom, so any kingdom that hasn't rolled around yet, or one that you didn't pick it up for, you do want to make sure to go and get it. These will also appear in the $5 flash offers. However, I would just advise waiting until they pop up since they're just useless anyways. Anyways, other than that, there are 2 other pretty noteworthy weapons to go get, both of which I already mentioned, and they are Doomed Glaive and Hope's Crescent, both of which will also help you with the event, and they are also just good in general. If I had to go for one, I would definitely say Doomed Glaive. However, it is substantially more expensive than a Hope's Crescent. However, it is also substantially better and used in way, way more instances, particularly with Truffle and Beatrix and stuff like that. Really great weapon. But yeah, it's 900 diamonds, 60,000 souls, 2,200 green, which will probably be the biggest issue for some people to get that many green jewels, and 10 celestial trait stones. So if you can craft anything this week, this is the thing to go for. I would almost say this is almost better than Iron Gut. Well, honestly, if you needed a delve option, Iron Gut's obviously better. But for well-roundedness, as far as where it's usable, Doomed Glaive does cover a lot more range, especially if you don't have any of the 6 Doomed weapons. That's definitely the one to go for. Anyways, Hope's Crescent. So we got this thing. This obviously a lot cheaper, but still a little bit up there. But I do highly advise at least getting this if you can't afford Doomed Glaive, as it will help you out a lot for the weekly events, and it's usable in some other instances. Very situational, but still a armor tier weapon that does triple damage, and in many instances is enough to one-shot the enemy, and in those instances, it's okay. Other than that, the only other thing that we have craftable this week is Wolf Hammer. I would just completely ignore it. Obviously, if you want it for completionist purposes, make sure to get it. However, it is a pretty useless weapon in the current state of the game, and I would not really bother getting it unless you just want it for completionist sake. But that's pretty much high priority on it. Doomed Glaive, Hope's Crescent, this dagger just picking up for the sake of having it, and the Wolf Hammer would be the last one that you would pick up simply for the sake of having it. Anyways, that's everything with Soulforge. Let's go over a couple teams real quick. So as far as various teams throughout the week, we have ourselves the 2 that end up showing for the thing. You can end up using either the Doomed Glaive here or the Hope's Crescent, as I mentioned, one or the other, and just skull spam it out. You can also use the new troop that we ended up getting this week in first slot. However, I opted not to go for it in order to feed the weapon more mana so that it can cycle a bit quicker, which I feel like overall will end up being the better method. Other than that, we do have ourselves for the Delve, a restriction of green and a red, and of course you can use any weapon color. So with here, we have a pretty standard Rowan team. You could just quick kill with that. That should be pretty straightforward as far as getting that done. For the higher one, I figured I show a Yasmin's Pride Catches the Bull team. I normally wouldn't show one a little bit more expensive like this. However, both components were craftable last week. So given that they were available so recently, I figured it'd be a good time to show it since this is one of the few things it actually gets used for. So you might notice by the coloration of red and green that you're not allowed to use an Iron Gut. So you would need a different option this time around. Unfortunately, Iron Gut, while it is one of the best delve options in the game, cannot run for every single delve due to the fact that some do not cover one of his 3 colors. So in this case, it does not cover one of his 3 colors, so you can end up using something like this, which is a Yasmin's Pride. Defeat catches the bull, bunch of HP. He has a 2-to-1 boost ratio on that. You hit 2nd slot, you hit 4th slot after some Yasmin's Prides, and you wipe the entire team. Harpy Mage here is for mana accumulation, and Brownstorm. Leprechaun is for immediate mana accumulation, and ends up working out pretty good, and you use Cockatrice the Bull as your primary damage source. You can use this with the Shaman hero class in order for quicker battles. However, it is a lot safer with Titan, so you can go pretty much either way. You can start off with Shaman when you have no chance of dying, but once you start getting later into the delves, you probably want to switch over to Titan just as a safety precaution so that you don't end up dying. Other than that, for Peer Faction, this entire faction can be Peer Faction can be soloed with Wild Knight. I'm pretty sure with one single Wild Knight you could literally just win this entire faction. If you really wanted to, you could even just run 4 of him just to make sure you have one left by the final battle. Obviously, a little bit more variety will be a bit more of a better team, but as long as you have one of these going into the final battle, you should be good, and given how he normally functions, you should most likely have both of them. But he ends up exploding a gem, gaining a bunch of a life and attack, and anything that ever does this in a delve is an insanely good option. It's boosted by green, so he gets even more on top of that, and he gets barrier so that he gets to not die. He gets to get Hunter's Mark whenever he gets hit with skull damage, and if I'm not mistaken, this does trigger when they hit on barrier. So even if they hit on barrier, I'm pretty sure that still triggers the Hunter's Mark as them hitting on you. And he also has 33% score reduction, which helps go for his tankiness even further, on top of the fact that he has HP reduction, HP gain, and has in that barrier, and just overall should be pretty tanky and should almost never die. Other than that, Puka is mostly just to mana drain the enemy when they're about to get a dangerous cast off. Just mana drain them and you'll be good to go. It does create 12 red. Unfortunately, it's not green, which would have been a lot more helpful. However, red will still be able to go and help a little bit because of this thing. It gets the Hunter's Mark, a enemy whenever you take reds, and obviously most of these reds will be taken off of Puka when you cast their ability, and I'll end up giving you Hunter's Mark if you don't already have them Hunter's Mark, so that the Wild Knight can just one-shot everything with his attack gain. So overall, should be pretty straightforward. He also has an ability that can do a little bit of poke damage, and he can even give you Bless if you happen to do the final hit. However, you generally don't really cast his ability. The whole point is just keep going Wild Knight, Wild Knight, Wild Knight, Wild Knight over and over again. The reason for the +1 yellow is just to make sure you can get Puka up in case you really need her mana drain. There are a couple dangerous things like transforms and stuff like that you might want to disable so that they don't get a cast off, but for the most part, you're pretty much just spamming Wild Knight until you win, and that is essentially the premise of the Pure faction for the Wild Court. And other than that, we have Warden classes Thursday. This is a restriction of Magrim Woods beasts, so you'll specifically have to use beasts from Magrim Woods. As far as this, there's a couple different ways you can go with it, like Forest Guardian and such. However, the cheapest way is just Black Manacles with triple Spirit Fox. Pretty straightforward. Just do a bunch of true damage pokes, get Black Manacles to poke them down, and this will work really good for the free battles. And again, I don't really advise spending gems or anything in order to go and get this up. It's rather pricey to do so. But anyways, that's pretty much everything with this video that I really want to go over. At the moment, we will be, as I mentioned, covering about 1 or 2 other videos going over campaigns. One of them will be going over all 16 tasks and a nice little brief thing to basically go over the optimal ways to go and do all 16 tasks. And the other video will basically be a summary over the entirety of campaigns. While we have gone over them earlier, I do want to go and just kind of organize a little bit and figure out how to go over it as concisely as possible, a little bit less rambly than this video, and kind of prepare a little bit for that now that we have all the info on the forum and everything else like that to really mention with it. And we'll have that coming out very soon, which will basically just be going over pretty much everything with the campaigns in a nice video. And of course, as far as campaign tasks, we'll also be doing them generally on Mondays and Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here on our YouTube channel. We stream every single night at that time, and we'll be, of course, going over the World Lore event that we have this week. We'll be doing those tasks, and just kind of messing around with all of that. So anyways, guys, I will catch you guys later. Thank you all so much for watching. If you have any other questions, feel free to leave it in the comment section below. All of the teams mentioned in this video will also be in the comment section below if you want to go copy any of them. And I will catch you guys later. Have a wonderful week. Goodbye, everyone.